everyone, welcome to Myp Biology. Today our new unit is going to be interaction. So let's get started. First of all, let's try to answer this question. What is interaction? So scientifically, it's a particular way in which matter, fields, and atomic and subatomic particles affect each other. But in a simple way, it's an effect that things have on each other. Whatever surrounds us is interacted with each other, directly or indirectly. And today our main focus is going to be animal interaction. So animal interaction, it doesn't matter whether it's animal or other interactions, but all of them involve response, and most of these responses are dealt with the nervous system. Also today we're going to have a glimpse at the nervous system. Nervous system is made up of brain, spinal cord, and nerves, both in human and animals. So it gives us the control of our body, and it gives us the feedback about the world. Nervous system is made up of neurons. We call it the nerve cells. Neurons are made up of dendrite, which receives the impulse, which receives the information, sends it to the soma, body part, and then the axon are actually sending the information or stimuli to other neurons and other neurons dendrite. So we have three types of neurons: sensory, relay, and motor neurons. What are their functions? Sensory neurons' function is to accept the stimuli and send it to the relay neuron. Relay neuron is playing a role of transition because it is in the spinal cord, and we call also this intermediate neuron, intraneurons also, because it connects the sensory and motor neuron. And okay, for example, you touch your hand a hot pot. What happens? The stimuli, the sensory neuron takes the stimuli, takes it to the relay neuron. The relay neuron is in the spinal cord, and as well as the spine of this stimuli is also sent to the brain to examine. Then after the answer, it takes just like milliseconds, and then relay neurons send the stimuli to motor neurons dendrite, and then the motor neurons axon brings it to your muscles, and you actually pull your hand backwards. This is how the nervous system actually works in our body. It can be seen in the reflex sac as well. As you see, the person is touching a hot pot, and what happens? The sensor neurons take the stimuli to the spinal cord via relay neuron or intraneuron, and when this message to the brain, the stimuli is examined and the response comes back by the motor neurons, and you pull your hand backwards. Also, we can say whenever you're going to a doctor to examine yourself, to have a simple checkup, what happens? Doctor, in order to check your reflexes, sometimes use hammer and just slightly beat your knee. And what happens here? So you have this unconditioned reflex where your hamstring muscle contracts and your legs are actually pulling up. So this is how the sensory neuron takes the stimuli to the spinal cord via intraneuron, relay neuron, and then when the stimuli exam, it comes to the muscle cells by the motor neuron, and you respond to a stimuli. How impulses pass from one neuron to other neuron, the synapse. So today also we're going to talk about the neurons and the synapse. Neurons use electrical signals to communicate along their lengths, and often use chemical signals called neurotransmitters to communicate with one another. So the junction between two neurons and nerve cells we call the synapse. This movement of ions is the key to all electrical events in neurons. So the synapse, we might say that what is electrical signals? Electrical signals is actually movement of negatively and positively charged ions moving inside and outside the cell, and this creates the voltage, and that is how the nerve cells communicate with each other. For example, the outside, the sodium ions are more, inside the cell potassium ions are more. So now there it's actually resting, there is no impulses that are actually received, so the sodium ions are outside and potassium ions are inside. But when the nerve cells get the impulse, so the gates are actually open and sodium potassium exchange going on inside and outside the cells, and this creates the voltage where the neurotransmitters get into the cell, and through the dendrites it goes to the axon and to other neurons dendrite, and by this way actually our neurons work. And here, as you see, this when the we get the stimuli here, so those are the neurotransmitters. What happened? The calcium gate opens and calcium ions get inside the cell. It triggers the neurotransmitters and it opens the gate of sodium potassium ion gate. And here we have the sodium potassium exchange inside the cell and the outside the cell. So there is always a voltage across the membrane due to an imbalance in positively and negatively charged ions, and the voltage remains at 70 millivolt unless impulse is passing. So resting potential is minus 70 millivolt. When the neurons don't get any impulse, they're actually remain at minus 70 millivolt. But during a nerve impulse, the voltage rises to plus 40 millivolt and then immediately returns to minus 70 millivolt. So for the nerve cells, all or nothing. Either they get the impulse or they don't get anything. So how it happens, and depending on which particular neurotransmitter binds to which receptor, the neuron might either get excited or inhibited. What is the excitatory neurotransmitter? For example, you're getting, imagine that your hand is in cold water. At first you don't get anything. Of course you know, you feel that your hand is in the cold water, but the impulse is not so strong. So that's why sometimes it doesn't give the excitatory neurotransmitter. It's simple. It doesn't get the threshold. This is the threshold, minus 55. Sometimes there are some impulses that even doesn't go up to minus 55. They are actually wandering between minus 70 and minus 55, but they're actually light impulses that doesn't actually worry you. But after just like few minutes you feel that, oh my god, it's so cold, and that's why this impulse actually passing the threshold to minus 55 and going up, so it is the depolarization. Depolarization is actually when the stimuli is very strong that it can easily trigger the nerve cells, and they are going up to plus 40. Remember, only strong impulses can create the depolarization, not light impulses. Inhibitory neurotransmitters actually, they are the graded potential that push the neuron further from the threshold, make an action potential harder to achieve. Why we need inhibitory neurotransmitters, guys? Remember, when our nerve cells, neurons take the impulse, and when it's a strong impulse, it goes up to plus 40 millivolt, and then in order to have a normal function for the neurons, nerve cells, they after depolarization they directly go down to hyperpolarization, just because that's the inhibitory neurotransmitter, and by this way they don't accept other stimuli. So our nerve cells only work with one stimuli. So they get information, they examine, they answer it, and then they hyperpolarize it, just because of they just stop other stimuli to come and to accept. So, and then after hyperpolarization they go to the resting potential, then another impulse they can accept. So look how it actually works. So the resting potential is minus 70. Then when you get the strong excitatory impulse, it goes up to the plus 40, then goes down to the hyperpolarization, just less than minus 70, then again again remains at minus 70. So remember, for the neurons is all or nothing. Either they get information, get stimuli and answer it, or there is nothing here. So we've got a video. Let's watch a video here about nervous system.
You should already know that the nervous system is essentially a massive, complex, body-wide communication system. Messages are relayed to the central nervous system through sensory neurons. So a stimulus is detected by a receptor which sends the electrical impulse message along a sensory neuron to the central nervous system. The central nervous system then relays the message via motor neurons to effectors which provide a response, such as telling your legs to run. In this video, we are going to look at the nervous system in more detail, including the different nerve cells and their structure. To clarify, nerve cells are known as neurons, and there are three different types: sensory, intermediate or relay, and motor neurons. These specialized cells carry information as tiny electrical impulses and make up the nervous system. Sensory neurons carry signals from receptors to the spinal cord and brain. Intermediate or relay neurons carry messages from one part of the central nervous system to another. The motor neurons carry signals from the central nervous system to effectors. They all have three main components: a cell body with a nucleus, dendrons and dendrites, which are the input of the neuron. They receive information from other neurons or the external environment and transfer this information to the cell body, and axons, which carry the signal away from the cell body. Axons are surrounded by an insulating sheath which speeds up the rate of conduction. It makes the nerve impulses travel faster. Because the sensory neurons are the ones that detect the stimulus, they have receptors at the end of their fibers, whereas because motor neurons trigger the reaction, they have motor end plates which cause muscle fibers to contract or glands to secrete hormones. The relay neurons make connections with other neurons across gaps that are called synapses. So let's have a look at how synapses work. Synapses are a junction between two adjacent neurons, and the electrical impulse has to cross the junction to carry on its journey. The electrical impulse arrives along an axon. This triggers the release of a chemical neurotransmitter, which diffuses across the synapse and binds with the receptors on the membrane of the next neuron. This stimulates the second neuron to generate a new electrical signal. Synapses not only connect two or more adjacent neurons together, but they also allow the nerve signals to travel in one direction only, and they also control the speed of the signal. In another video, we will look at reflex reactions and what happens when a very quick response is needed. So from this video, you should know that there are three different types of neuron, or nerve cells: the sensory neuron, which detects the signal, the relay or intermediate neuron, and the motor neurons, which trigger the response. You should also know how synapses work, transmitting the impulse between neurons.
Alright guys, so now we have got the review part. You're going to answer all these questions. So if you cannot answer one of them, go back and revise the topic, revise the lesson once more, and then come back to the review part. So here we have also synapse imitation. Right, like stand up and hold each other's hand and make an open circle. Then one person at the beginning of the circle gets the stimuli and send it to others one by one. Calculate the time stimuli travels from first to the last person. It's a really interesting game to play and to understand the synapse. So thanks for watching guys. Have a nice day. Bye bye.